All right, welcome to today's Coach's Happy Hour. It's morning time where I am in California, and whether it's morning, evening, tomorrow, where you are, appreciate you joining. Today we're going to do core exercises as we did last week, but this week we're going to focus on the posterior chain, and that's anything on the back side of the body. Core is defined as any muscle that's attached to the pelvis or the spine. So you'll see that we'll work some of that today. So let's get started. We'll do a series of exercises starting with bridges just to open up the hips in the front. So back side of the body that we're going to work here is glutes and hamstrings and back extensors. So we're going to start lying down on the ground, lifting the hips. And I suggest tucking the tailbone just a little bit to really make sure we smooth out the front of the hips. And then you can even open the chest a little bit. And let's start with just extending one leg out and seeing if you can maintain that line. And then switching legs. So we're going to do this 5 times each leg. And it's not just about going through the motions, it's about trying to achieve 2 things here. One is hip lift, smooth hips, and the other is when you lift the leg, not letting the hip side where the leg has lifted up to drop. So we're trying to avoid this, and we're also trying to maintain that extension, which is why I just say 5 each side. If we're going to do quality, we may not be able to do quantity. So quality over quantity. And then the core muscles that you can see that this is working by keeping the hips level, we'll go one more each side, is multifidus muscles. These are deep muscles in your spine that actually prevent rotation. So there's times where we want to rotate and move freely, or that's part of our mobility that we need to achieve for our exercise or our healthy movement in life. And then there's elements or times where we want stability. We don't want to rotate. We don't want to rotate excessively, or we don't want to rotate at all. And those muscles, like those deep core muscles, multifidi, work to stabilize the spine and prevent rotation. Thanks everyone. I can see some waves. I appreciate y'all being here. So we started with bridges, and then we're going to go to another back exercise. Again, today's all about posterior chain, the back side of the body. And this one is back extension. Both of these we did last time. And we're going to do it focusing on bending at the thoracic, which is broad line. So that's the middle back. We're going to come up and down, but we're trying to move in that thoracic mid-back versus really emphasizing lower back. The other area we're trying not to move is the cervical spine. So when we come up, if we extend the neck, that's really what we want to keep in neutral. And again, just focusing on that mid-back. So we're going to do a few more of these. And I've got you angled a little bit differently today because we're going to show you some band movements too. So in case you're just joining us or you wanted to check what you need to have, you really don't need anything except for at the end I'm going to do a few band exercises, and I kept one piece of equipment as well. So if you've got bands, grab bands. And the other piece of equipment I kept was foam roll. After all of our stretching sessions using the foam roll, I figured we could bank on that most people had a foam roll at home. Bridges, back extension, and what are the back extensions for? We just did it on the ground. They're for extending the spine. So what do we do when we're at desks or on the bike or sometimes running or even sometimes swimming? A lot of times we're tight in this position. These exercises, especially this one, back extension, is bringing us to that aligned position. So let's move a little bit lower down. We're going to go back to the glutes and incorporate the hamstrings too. And mostly as humans, because we walk on 2 feet, we're quad dominant. So we're going to try to make sure that we've got a good balance between the quads and the hamstrings. So foam roll is going to be what we're going to utilize. Let's get you back so you can really see. But foam roll is what we're going to do to utilize the hamstrings. So there's going to be a movement here. It's similar to that bridge movement. We lie on our backs. So just make sure that very visible. And we're going to lift the hips. So this is actually the second phase of the motion. The hands can be right by the sides. The first phase is we're going to let that foam roll out and then squeeze the glutes to lift the hips. And the hamstrings are flexors of the knee. So here we are at more of an extension of the knee, and then when we bend the knee, we're flexing that knee joint. So that's what hamstrings do when you run, when you cycle. They're not really used a lot when you swim, but the glutes are. So this one again, glutes, hamstrings, and even those back extensors, the muscles that run along the spine vertically. And with the foam roll, you might have limited movement. Like here I am starting at full extension and coming up. But if you lose the foam roll, you can stop a little bit earlier. So I'll do it both ways. And right now you can see my movement is pretty methodical, deliberate. I'm trying not to use momentum to make the motion happen. Let's go a couple more here. Again, quality over quantity. So probably you've seen this done with a ball or even with a TRX, and those are great tools also. It doesn't take a lot of equipment, but there's a few key pieces of equipment that I think are great to have for a home gym. And suspension trainer, the ball, the foam roll, bands, and then we can move forward from there if you expand into all sorts of other equipment, but you can do so much with those. Okay, so let's move on to, oh boy, hard to go into this after that one, but we'll get in there. Actually, we'll give you an upper body posterior chain exercise to break it up a little bit. So this one, I do have my bands attached a little bit higher, and this is, I'm using bands with handles. If you don't have handles or like medical tubing, that's fine. You can actually grab onto the band. In fact, I'm going to show you both ways because it's actually better to have that hammer grip, which is the grip you'd use when your thumb is facing you, as if you're hammering. Okay, so we're going to pull back. These are called face pulls. We're going to pull back, high elbows, and then we're going to extend the thumbs as much as we can past our ears. And this is harder with bands because the resistance gets greater here. I'm going to stagger my stance because of that. That's not necessarily where we're the strongest in the exercise. And what you can really focus on is squeezing the shoulder blades together and back, but not up. We're squeezing them in the middle, even the lower. And then we're working all those mid-back, upper back muscles. So again, the neck, cervical spine is not what we're talking about here. That stays neutral. The back of the shoulder, posterior deltoid. And why are we putting this in? Well, yes, it's posterior chain, it's the back side of the body. But because we tend to be so forward when we sit in a chair on a computer, we're here. When we're on the bike, we're here. And like I said before, even sometimes running, we tend to be here. And this is helping things like running is actually here. We're actually elbowing back. Okay, so that's posterior deltoid. We want that upper mid-back to be strong to carry the torso. And so all these posterior chain exercises, including the upper body ones, are just so beneficial in balancing our bodies into what that upright, strong position is going to be. So even if you're on the bike, you're here, ideally, then here. Okay, so this is that loose, lax group of muscles that we just worked, and then we're talking about tensing those muscles. So let's move back to the floor. We'll do that back plank exercise that I have next. And this one's really hard for most people because it opens up the shoulder. So we're gonna work the glutes, the hamstrings, the back extensor. Now we're gonna get the posterior deltoid, the back of the shoulder, the mid-back, and we're gonna open the chest and shoulders, which is really tough for most people. So a couple ways to do this. We're gonna start on our hands, fingertips pointing forward, ideally. If for some reason that hurts your shoulders, you can bring your fingertips pointed out to the side or even behind you, but this is all part of that opening and flexibility, even in the forearms. Okay, so we're gonna come up, we're trying to find that ideal line again, and holding that line, just like we did with the bridges. You can find challenges by lifting one leg and then the other. Now we're going to that same theme of bridges where we're trying to work multifidus muscles. We're not trying to let the other hip drop. Head can be down at the belly button. It can be in neutral. It's okay to work the neck muscles, but trying to keep that neck in neutral versus here. Or it can be behind you. So in this case, we can play with that variety. And that's pretty tough to open up the shoulders. The other version, which is tougher for the shoulder opening, is on the elbows. And I also think it emphasizes the core a little bit more than the back of the shoulders, but it definitely opens up the shoulders more. Harder to lift that leg. Our lever is shorter. Okay. We have one more exercise in the group today, and that is a hip drive with the band. And the hip drive with the band, I have a different kind of band here. I have a circular band. If you only have the strap band, that's okay. You can grab onto the straps. I can even show you both ways. But I've got the band set at hip or slightly lower level. And this is a hip drive. So just like in the bridges, just like in the hamstring curls, just like in the back planks, we're trying to take the hips from the bent position into the flex position. So we're gonna drive. I've got a staggered stance as if I'm running out of the gate. I'm gonna drive the hips forward, and I'm gonna stay on one leg. And what am I utilizing to do this? Glutes, hamstrings, quads, back extensors. Okay, so I'm not gonna give you a full record with the handles, but just if I had to and the handles were below me, I would just be grabbing the handles to do this exercise. And I just switched legs. So if you only have a handle group, and that makes it harder, so I'm not gonna use double resistance. If you only have a handle group of bands, you could do it by holding the handles and pulling forward. You can also do this with a partner, and they'd be holding the band. Good. And I love those exercises that kind of bring you into the position that you do during your sport. So definitely runners and Nordic skiers for sure. That's a big one. And if you're a cyclist or a swimmer, what it's doing is it's bringing you into that hip extension, which as a cyclist you don't get into on the bicycle, but when you get off the bicycle you surely want to get into that position. Or for triathletes, you're on the bike, you go to the run, you want to be able to extend the hips after being hip flexed for so long. Okay, so we're going to do everything one more time in just a circuit fashion, a little less explanation. And maybe I'll just check if there's any questions. Just nice waves. Thanks guys for joining. All right, so the first exercise again was bridges, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that because they're really incorporated into all of the other ones. So as we were lying on the floor, we lifted our hips. You can do this as a lower and a raise. You can do this as a single leg lower and a raise. Or what we did was we alternated legs while we kept our hips lifted. Working those deep spinal muscles also that prevent rotation. And our next exercise, I think, was back extensions. So we're going to come up into the back extension, trying to focus on the thoracic spine extension. You can make it harder by bringing the arms overhead if you need more load, or holding onto a medicine ball. And the cool thing about arms overhead is all of a sudden I really feel like a psoas stretch. So it's like the arms come overhead, you're extending, and then all of a sudden, if you're doing it right, if you're not arching at the lower back, because this would compress the back, and it's really not extending the hips. But if you do it correctly, arms overhead, then you're really feeling the hip flexors even open up more. And then hamstring curls was third in line. And we're going to come so we'll start from full extension. Ideally, you do want to get the muscle exercise in its full range of motion. And we're going to lift the hips, get that full hip extension, utilizing glutes. We bend the knee, utilizing the hamstrings, and utilizing those back extensors. Next week, we'll bring in Nordic hamstrings, but I'll have to set that up. I could set it up on the stairs. So Nordic hamstrings will be, stay tuned, or you can look them up and try them. And then we're going to go into the face pulls, and we'll do this kneeling. So I actually like that hammer grip. If you use the straps, make sure you're continuing that hammer grip so we're not in internal rotation as we come into external shoulder rotation, a little more impingement potential there. And we're going to just pull back. So high elbows. You can do all sorts of interesting variations. I'm really using the back of the shoulders and the upper mid back to work and hold that position. And then we'll go back into the general face pulls. And then I'm just gonna make sure we're refreshed here. I think we got unrefreshed. There we go. We're back. All right. So, back planks, super tough ones, I think. One of the toughers. And I think they're tougher on the elbows than on the hands. So, let's do the hands this morning. And if I really think about neutral spine, this is kind of a great segue into what does the cervical neck do a lot? Well, it comes into this position jutting forward. So in this exercise, I can think about drawing my chin to the back of my throat, deep neck flexors, and maintaining neutral while opening the chest and shoulders. It's hard. If you need the extra challenge, you can lift the leg, but it's amazing how easy it is to get the neck out of position. And notice when I jut my neck forward, where do my hips go? Just automatically, they're not connected, but sometimes they feel like they are. And then our last exercise is hip drive, banded hip drive. right at the hip crease. And then let's go 5 each side. Really squeezing the glutes when you come forward on that right side. Oops, we're going more than 5. Switch sides. So when you're strength training, you're trying to find a resistance that's going to effectively load you. So generally, you're going to need the band or gravity working against the body, like in a squat or a pistol squat, single leg, dumbbells. Because we need that load, however we create it, body weight, bands, dumbbells, the ball, the foam roll, we need that load to stimulate the muscle to work and strengthen. Thank you for joining. We'll see you the next time we meet, which is in 3 weeks. As you know, we alternate through the coaches for our happy hour, and everything is recorded live on our Instagram account on Tech. So thanks for joining.